1993, California versus Oregon, October 2nd, 1993. We're in Berkeley, and things are looking ugly for the Golden Bears. Number 17, Cal is getting absolutely steamrolled on their home turf. Oregon jumps out to a 30-0 lead early in the second quarter, and the Ducks are feeling themselves. Cal's defense looks lost, the offense is lifeless, and honestly, fans are probably thinking about beating traffic before halftime. But then, enter Dave Barr. Cal's junior quarterback starts heating up, and suddenly the Bears show some life. They punch in 2 quick touchdowns before halftime to make it 30-14. Not exactly a game yet, but hey, it's something. Then the third quarter hits, and it's like a completely different team shows up in blue and gold. Barr is in full attack mode. 3 straight touchdown drives later, and Cal has the lead, 35-30. Yep, after being down 30-0, they're somehow on top. Of course, Oregon doesn't fold. The Ducks answer back in the fourth, reclaiming the lead 41-35. But Cal ain't done yet. With just over a minute left in the game, Barr delivers a perfect strike for the go-ahead touchdown. 42-41, Oregon got one last shot driving into field goal range. Set up for a 47-yard attempt to win it at the horn. The kick sailed wide. Ball game. Cal stunned Oregon 42-41, pulling off the biggest comeback in program history, erasing a 30-point deficit. It was one of those wild Pac-10 shootouts that nobody saw coming, and nobody who was there ever forgot. Dave Barr ended the day with 4 touchdown passes and instant hero status in Berkeley. 2016, Tulsa versus Fresno State, September 24th, 2016. Fresno State comes out blazing, everything's going right. They jump out to a 31-0 lead midway through the second quarter, and it looks like Tulsa forgot they had a game that day. The Golden Hurricane defense is getting torched, the offense can't get a thing going, and honestly, it is hard to say who was still tuned into that one. But then, just before halftime, Tulsa finally shows a pulse. Running back D'Angelo Brewer punches one in from short range, putting Tulsa on the board to make it 31-7. At the time, I'm sure Tulsa fans were hoping it was a promising sign, perhaps some cautious optimism brewing on their sideline. Then the second half happened, and it was all Tulsa. Quarterback Dane Evans came out slinging it. He threw 3 touchdowns and added another on the ground. Brewer kept grinding out yards, piling up carries and touchdowns. Suddenly, Fresno State's defense was backpedaling, and that once screaming 31-point lead was shrinking fast. Tulsa went on to outscore Fresno 41-10 from the moment they finally got on the board. The defense that looked lost in the first half, it tightened up, forced mistakes, and shut the Bulldogs down when it mattered the most. By the time the fourth quarter ended, it was all tied up at 41. In overtime, Tulsa stuck with what got them there. Brewer capped off the drive with his 3rd rushing touchdown of the night, with a bulldozing score to make it 48-41. On Fresno State's possession, they got nothing. Game over. From being down 31-0 to walking off with a 48-41 win, it was the largest comeback in Tulsa football history. A flat-out heartbreaker for Fresno, and a massive rally that put the Golden Hurricane on highlight reels everywhere. 2016, TCU versus Oregon, the backup legend at the Alamo Bowl, January 2nd, 2016. The Alamo Bowl was supposed to be a high-powered showdown between 2 top-tier offenses. But before the game even kicked off, chaos struck. TCU's star quarterback Trevone Boykin was suspended after an off-field incident, and the Horned Frogs were rolling with a backup nobody had ever heard of, Bram Kohlhausen, a senior walk-on, making his first and only college start, and facing a top 15 Oregon team no less. By halftime, absolute disaster. Oregon jumped out to a 31-0 lead, and it looked like the Ducks were about to run TCU right out of the Alamodome. TCU couldn't move the ball, couldn't stop Oregon, and fans were already heading for the Riverwalk before the halftime. But something wild must have happened in that TCU locker room. Bram Kohlhausen, the legend of Fort Worth, was released upon Oregon. The guy came out in the second half playing like a man possessed. He started dicing up Oregon's defense, leading 5 scoring drives and breathing life back into a team that had looked totally cooked. The Horned Frogs clawed their way back, touchdown after touchdown. The crowd was stunned. Oregon's sideline got quieter with every possession. With just minutes left in regulation, Kohlhausen took off on a 26-yard scramble and dove into the end zone to tie it up at 31-31. Meanwhile, Oregon's offense completely iced. They didn't score a single point in the entire second half. It went to overtime, then double overtime, then triple overtime. And in the third OT, TCU finally broke through. They punched in a touchdown to take a 47-41 lead. The defense stepped up one final time and slammed the door shut. Game over. History made. From 31 down to a 6-point win, TCU tied the record for the biggest comeback in bowl game history. And Bram Kohlhausen, this random backup who had never started a game, became a TCU legend overnight. Quick timeout. If you're into these wild comeback stories, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. All right, back to it. But keep listening for the recap of the largest comeback in history. 2006, Texas Tech versus Minnesota. December 29th, 2006, the Insight Bowl. Minnesota came out swinging and looked like they were about to boat race Texas Tech. With 7:47 left in the third quarter, the Golden Gophers were up 38-7, and the Red Raiders looked completely cooked. They couldn't move the ball, couldn't stop anything, and ESPN even flashed a 99.8% win probability for Minnesota. And then, everything fell apart. Texas Tech suddenly came alive. Quarterback Graham Harrell started slinging it around the field, and the Gophers' defense had no answers. The Red Raiders ripped off 31 straight points in what felt like the blink of an eye. In just about 20 minutes of game time, that 31-point deficit disappeared. The crowd went from, "Why are we still here?" to full-on chaos. Harrell finished the night with over 440 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, carving up Minnesota's secondary like it was a 7-on-7 drill. And with just 2 seconds left in regulation, Tech drilled a 52-yard field goal to tie it at 38-38 and send the game into overtime. Minnesota, shell-shocked, got the ball first in overtime and could only manage a field goal. It felt like a white flag. Tech got the ball, marched right down to the goal line, and then running back Shannon Woods finished the job with a 3-yard touchdown run. Ball game. Texas Tech 44, Minnesota 41. It went down as the biggest comeback in bowl game history at the time. And while it was an all-time moment for Texas Tech and Mike Leach's air raid offense, it was a nightmare for Minnesota. The collapse was so epic, it basically sealed the fate of head coach Glenn Mason. He was fired shortly after the game. For Red Raider fans, it was legendary. For Gopher fans, pure pain. 1989, Ohio State versus Minnesota. October 28, 1989. Ohio State hit the road to face Minnesota, and by late in the second quarter, it looked like the Buckeyes should have stayed on the bus. The Gophers were rolling, and after a 70-yard bomb made it 31-0, it felt like a full-on collapse in motion for OSU. The Metrodome was rocking, Buckeye fans were stunned, and it looked like Minnesota was about to hang a blowout on one of the Big Ten's biggest names. But Ohio State wasn't done yet. Just before halftime, the Buckeyes finally broke through with a touchdown to make it 31-7. It didn't seem like much at the time, maybe a momentum booster or maybe just saving face, but that score flipped the energy and Ohio State came out in the second half a completely different team. Quarterback Greg Frey took over. He threw 4 touchdown passes in the second half and started shredding Minnesota's defense. Every time the Buckeyes got the ball, they looked more confident, more dangerous. At the same time, OSU's defense clamped down hard, giving up just 6 points after halftime and completely taking the air out of the Gophers' offense. The comeback built up slowly, methodically. No trick plays, no crazy bounces, just hard-nosed football and a quarterback who wouldn't quit. Then, with 2:34 left on the clock, Frey connected with Brian Stablin for a 15-yard touchdown that gave Ohio State its first lead of the game, 41-37. Minnesota had one last shot to respond, but their final drive fizzled out. Ball game. The Buckeyes walked out of the Metrodome with the largest comeback win in school history, storming back from 31 points down. To this day, that comeback still stands as the biggest in Ohio State's storied history. 1984, Maryland versus Miami. November 10th, 1984. Maryland walked into the Orange Bowl to face defending national champion Miami, and by halftime, the Terps were getting absolutely run off the field. The Hurricanes were up 31-0, rolling on both sides of the ball, and Maryland looked completely outclassed. Starting quarterback Stan Gelbaugh had struggled, and by the break, he was on the bench. In came Frank Reich, the backup. He hadn't played much, and the Terps were just trying to make the final score look respectable. But then, something clicked. Reich came out firing in the second half. He led 3 straight touchdown drives, getting Maryland right back in the game. Suddenly, it wasn't a joke anymore. It was a real comeback. Then came the turning point. Miami had a punt blocked, and Maryland recovered it for another score. Just like that, it was 34-28, and the Terps had all the momentum. Then Reich dropped the hammer. He hit Greg Hill on a 68-yard bomb, and for the first time all game, Maryland had the lead, 35-34. The crowd in the Orange Bowl was stunned, but Miami wasn't done yet either. The Hurricanes answered with a quick score of their own to go up 40-35. But Reich had one more answer in him. He calmly led a 12-play, 78-yard drive, chewing up the clock and shredding the Miami defense. The Terps capped it off with a 1-yard touchdown run from Tommy Neal, putting Maryland back in front 42-40 with under 4 minutes left. Miami had one final chance, but Maryland's defense stood tall. Ball game. The Terps pulled off a comeback for the ages, erasing a 31-point deficit to beat the defending champs on their own field. At the time, it was the largest comeback in NCAA history. And here's the wild part. Frank Reich didn't stop there. Less than a decade later, he pulled off another miracle. This time in the NFL, rallying the Buffalo Bills from 32 down to beat the Oilers in the playoffs. Comebacks? Yeah, they were kind of his thing. 2017, UCLA versus Texas A&M. Week 1 of the 2017 season, national TV at the Rose Bowl. UCLA was getting absolutely cooked. Texas A&M was bullying the Bruins up and down the field, running at will, hitting Josh Rosen on what felt like every dropback. And as the third quarter wound down, it was 44-10. That's right, down 34 points with just over 2 minutes left in the third. Fans were leaving, and social media was destroying UCLA's effort. Josh Rosen had other ideas. What followed was one of the most absurd, chaotic, and downright entertaining comebacks in college football history. Rosen didn't just get hot, he was out of his gourd. UCLA's offense flipped a switch, and Rosen led 5 straight touchdown drives. 4 of them came in the fourth quarter alone. He was dropping dimes, hitting guys in stride, moving the ball like it was a 7-on-7 drill. Need some drama? How about a fake spike that turned into a touchdown pass? Rosen channeling his inner Marino to freeze the defense. Want a perfect throw? He delivered a back shoulder fade in tight coverage that was straight out of an NFL playbook. Every drive felt more ridiculous than the last. With 43 seconds left, Rosen stood tall in the pocket and floated a beauty to Jordan Lasley in the end zone for the go-ahead score, 45-44. Bruins. From down 34 to up 1 in about 16 minutes of game time. Texas A&M had no answer, and just like that, it was over. UCLA's 34-point comeback tied for the second largest in FBS history, and honestly, it felt like something straight out of a movie. For Josh Rosen, it was peak Rosen, equal parts cool, dramatic, and wildly unpredictable. One minute he's getting battered and booed, the next he's walking off a hero. 2019, UCLA versus Washington State. 2 years after Josh Rosen's wild comeback against Texas A&M, UCLA did it again. But this time, the chaos happened on the road in Pullman. It was September 21st, 2019, and by late in the third quarter, UCLA looked dead in the water. Washington State led 49-17, and their quarterback Anthony Gordon was torching the Bruins. He already had 6 touchdown passes and over 400 yards through the air before the third quarter even ended. The Cougars were cruising, and UCLA fans probably started doom-scrolling the schedule. But then came the madness. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, better known as DTR, flipped the game on its head. What followed was a 19-minute stretch of absolute mayhem. UCLA rattled off 50 points in just over a quarter. Yes, 5-0. It started with a couple quick scoring drives, then a 69-yard fumble return touchdown, an onside kick recovery, and more DTR magic. He threw laser after laser, slipping touchdowns into tight windows, and added 2 scores on the ground for good measure. By the time the dust settled, DTR had 7 total touchdowns, 5 passing, 2 rushing, and had pulled UCLA all the way back from a 32-point hole. With just over a minute to play, UCLA actually led 67-63 after being down by 32 in Pullman in the middle of the night. Washington State had one last chance to answer, but the UCLA defense, yes, the same one that had given up 63 points and 720 yards, delivered the final blow. They got a strip sack, recovered the ball, and sealed the win. Final score, UCLA 67, Washington State 63. It was the second largest comeback in FBS history, tied with the one Rosen pulled off in 2017. 2 comebacks, same school, different quarterbacks, pure chaos. The game was an all-timer, not just for the comeback, but for the sheer absurdity of it. 1,300-plus yards of total offense, 14 combined touchdown passes, and 130 points on the board. Pac-12 after dark at its best. 2006. Michigan State versus Northwestern. October 21st, 2006. Michigan State rolled into Evanston looking for something, anything, to salvage a season that was slipping away. But by the middle of the third quarter, things somehow got worse. Northwestern lit up the scoreboard and jumped out to a 38-3 lead with 9:54 left in the third. That was 35 unanswered points, and the game felt all but over. The Spartans looked lifeless. The few MSU fans in the crowd looked miserable. Even the ESPN ticker probably had this one marked as a wrap. But then, the comeback started. Quarterback Drew Stanton finally got Michigan State on the board again to cut the deficit to 38-10. It didn't feel like much until the momentum started to swing. On the next Northwestern possession, Michigan State's defense stepped up and picked off a red zone pass, halting what could have been the dagger. Early in the fourth quarter, Stanton kept the pressure on, this time taking it in himself for a rushing score. Now it was 38-17. Still a long shot, but the feeling started to shift. Then came the play that flipped the script. Devin Thomas broke through the line and blocked a punt, a huge swing in field position. But it didn't stop there. Ashton Henderson scooped it up and took it to the house. Just like that, it was 38-24, and the once rowdy Northwestern crowd fell silent. From there, Stanton went into full command mode. He led the Spartans on back-to-back scoring drives, and with just over 3 minutes left, Michigan State tied it up at 38-38. You could hear the disbelief across Ryan Field. Then, with under a minute to go, the Spartans delivered one final punch. Another interception gave MSU the ball in great field position. Kicker Brett Swenson trotted out and calmly knocked through a 28-yard field goal to complete the unthinkable. Final score, Michigan State 41, Northwestern 38. From down 35 to up 3 in less than 25 minutes of game time, it became the largest comeback in FBS history. And now it's your turn. Drop a comment. What should we explore in our next video? If you enjoyed watching this video, click to subscribe and we'll see you in the next one.